With that, I'm going to introduce our first guest storyteller. Sue Halvorsen earned a bachelor's degree. Yay, Sue. Earned a bachelor's degree in wilderness education and traveled to many wild places. Yet the most amazing place she has ever visited is the edge of eternity. Sue.
Can I have this in the stand in here? Okay. I'm not good at this part. Okay. Okay, everybody hear me okay? All right. Okay. Well, I was once asked what the greatest gift ever given to me was. Without a doubt, a near-death experience. When I was in my early 20s, I started to not feel well. I went to the doctor, and they told me, nothing's wrong, you're just stressed. You need to go to the movies more. Okay. But I kept feeling worse and worse. No doctor could figure out what was wrong with me. They kept telling me, you're fine. They thought it was all in my head. But I felt like I was dying. I could tell I was slowly dying. But I just stuffed it in because they said it was in my head. Well, then one day, a doctor came in at our Domino's Pizza store where my husband and I franchised, and she could tell I wasn't feeling well. And she asked me a few questions. Then she said, you know what? Come on into my office. I'll do an exam on you. Okay, why not? So I went. She goes, you're too young to be feeling like this. She goes, what are you doing Sunday at 10 o'clock? As if she was inviting me to church. I said, nothing. She goes, great. Come on to the hospital. I'm going to do exploratory surgery on you. I'm like, whoo, okay. Exploratory surgery is when they make a slit right next to your belly button and they blow your abdomen up like a balloon. Then they take a camera and they poke it in there and they look at all your organs and they can take pictures. They call that exploratory surgery. So I arrived Sunday at 10 o'clock and they got me all prepped and the anesthesia put the medicine in me, but instead of going to sleep, I rose up out of my body towards the operating lights, up through the ceiling, and into the vast field universe full of stars. I felt perfect. I'd never felt that good in my entire life. Then I noticed there was one star brighter than the others, and I was drawn to it. And the closer I got, the bigger it got. And it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger till it filled my entire vision. Once it got that close, I realized I knew everything. I knew the answer to every question you could possibly ask. Not only did I know everything, I was a part of everything, but yet I was still an individual. Then I heard my name, Sue, Sue, Sue. And I wanted to stay, so I leaped for the center of all that brightness, and a hand grabbed my ankle and stopped me. And they kept repeating my name, Sue, Sue. I'm like, no! And I tried to leap again for the center of all that brightness, but the grip on my ankle got tighter and started pulling me away from the light. I was struggling the best I could to stay, but the grip was too strong. Then these wispy clouds started to form around me, like in a circle, as if I was in a tornado. And I tried to grasp the mist to stay, to no avail, and I just kept falling faster and faster through this vortex until, bam, I was slammed back into my body. And the nurse was hovering over me. Sue, Sue, it's time to wake up now. I was so disappointed. So finally, when they were able to keep me awake, the doctor entered my room, followed by 3 or 4 interns in practice, and then my husband. The doctor is on my left, my husband is on my right, and the 3 or 4 interns formed a half circle at the foot of my bed. The doctor looks up at her chart and says, you have stage 3 or 4 cancer, and it has spread throughout your body. Now, in 1988, that's pretty much a death sentence. I remember looking at her and saying, well, am I going to be all right? She just shakes her head, I don't know, and looks down at her chart. So I look around for anybody for signs of hope. Nobody was looking at me. Everybody was staring at the floor. I look at my husband, and he's got his head in his hands crying. So I stare at the ceiling for a moment, and all of a sudden, I heard the sounds of a photocopier scanning an image. And I looked up, and I saw this beam of light at the top of my head. It started moving down my body, just like it was scanning me. And then when it exited my feet, I knew that I was healed. I was going to be all right. So I turned to the doctor and I screamed, I'm healed! I scared the crap out of her. Of course, she's believing I'm in denial, so she pats me on the shoulder. Don't worry, honey. I've got you scheduled for major surgery in 2 days with one of the best oncologists at an oncology hospital. What we're going to do, she explained to me, is they're going to cut you up and down vertically, and they're going to try to remove as many organs as they can and still save your life. That was a plan, okay? But I didn't care because I was convinced. You could not have said anything to me that would have convinced me that I was not okay and healed. Plus, I wanted to go back to where I was at, and this time I was planning on not coming back. I told nobody what happened during that surgery. So they get me prepped for the major surgery. I'm excited. All right, I'm excited because I don't care what they think. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. So they put me under, and the surgery was 7 hours. But for me, it was like 1 second. There was none of the stuff I had in the first one. But the surgeon, the doctor, was right there by my bed, shaking me, going, Sue, you're going to be okay. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. This is doctor screaming that, right? I'm like, I know. Basically, when he got in there to do the major surgery, all of the tumors they saw in the first surgery, which during that first surgery, she brought in a second doctor because she wanted a second opinion while I was under. So he saw it, she saw it, my husband saw the pictures, the oncologist saw all the pictures of all the tumors were gone. The only tumors left was one on my uterus and one on my ovary. So they took those out. They sent them to the Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, some fancy oncology labs on the East Coast, and a few other ones in the local area. He said they all came back. They had no idea what those tumors were, but they were missing the aggressive cancer cell. So he said, my diagnosis, you're going to live to be 102, no further treatment. Now, normally a surgery, they still had to cut me up and down because they didn't know what they were going to find. They thought, even the pictures, they were going to have to do major surgery. So normally a surgery like that takes 7 days in the hospital before you can go home, and then another 3 months to recover when you're at home. I was out of the hospital in 3 days. I remember being wheeled outside. I remember looking at all the colors. They were so much more vibrant. And I remember the smells were so much richer. And I remember the ride home. I was looking at the cornfields and the wheat fields, seeing them with different eyes. They were so alive. It's like they were dancing in a pattern, swaying back and forth. I remember telling my husband, oh my God, look, do you see that? He's like, look at what? He didn't know what I was seeing. It was like I was seeing half in the spiritual realm and half in the physical realm. When we got home, because I still had to recover, I remember being in this blissful state. But every time, all of a sudden, something changed. Every time I went to sleep, it didn't matter if it was for a nap or for the evening, I'd go to hell. It was like a nightmare. I'd be lowered on my back, down a vortex. I'd hear a buzzing sound like, it was as I would be lowering to this dungeon or pit underground. I remember I was trying to wake up or trying to get out, and I couldn't. I'd be lowered onto this cement slab that was as cold as ice. And I remember seeing these horrible, I don't even know what to call them, beings walk by me. And I remember hearing cries of people being tortured and chains clinging, and people screaming. And I was trying to scream myself, and it was just horrible. And I remember feeling, you don't just feel pain, you are pain. You don't just feel lonely, you are loneliness. It's quite different than experiencing it when you are it. And it was just terrifying. And just when I thought I couldn't take another minute, I'd hear that sound again, and I'd start to be raised back up. And I was trying to wake up. You ever had a nightmare, you just can't wake up? You try to wake up, you just can't? Well, that was me. And I was being raised up, and then when I popped out top of the vortex, I'd wake up, and I'd be like gasping for air, sweat covering my body, and I'd beg my husband, don't let me fall asleep, don't make me fall asleep, I don't want to go back there anymore. That lasted for an entire week. And I remember the last time it happened, I was coming back up, same thing would happen every single time, the nightmare, everything would happen the same. I remember being raised back up. This time, when I popped out of the top, there was this big flash of light, like a lightning bolt, and a big, like, smack like that. And something clicked, something changed at that moment. And I had this burning desire to know what happens to you when you die. And I was just this little farm girl. I didn't know anything about New Age, nothing about spirituality. I was not a religious person, because this is before Google, this is before the internet. I didn't even know what a near-death experience was. So I just had this burning desire, and I told my husband everything that had happened to me in there. And so we began this search of what happens to you when you die. And the greatest gift that was given to me is I discovered the answer to what happens to you when you die, because I knew that both of them were a part of it. They both seemed a part of what happened. I didn't want to go to hell. I wanted this thing. And that drove me to find out the answer to what happens to you when you die. Thanks.